What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to the Fringe. Alberta is the talk of the town, especially with the G7 happening in Alberta this week, this upcoming week, as U.S. President Donald Trump is making his way to K Country, or Kananaskis, as it's referred to in Alberta, near the heart of the Rocky Mountains, to discuss, well, the G7. What's happening with all of our countries, where we're at in terms of tariffs, production, what the landscape looks like of the future for our country as well as multiple others. Yesterday, we talked about the possibility of a deal that's happening backdoor between U.S. President Donald Trump's administration and Danielle Smith in Alberta. And many people chimed in and said, yeah, I think there's a lot of backdoor talk. I think there's things that we don't know that are happening in the scene, because after running a video question from PJ the Belt, another YouTube channel that covers these sentiments, that had stated that they believed a deal had been reached, I questioned my audience to say, look, do you think it's possible? I certainly didn't. However, it's starting to look more clear now that there's proof in the pudding that something could happen. And I've said that Trump is a little unpredictable. Many people have said, no, he's calculated. I get that end of it. But he definitely doesn't let anyone know of what he's about to say or what he's about to do. He's a businessman after all, so why give anybody any leverage? Well, today, you can see the rumblings going out about the G7. Again, I feel something is happening in the background that if you connect the dots, if you look at the information, we now have proof that one way or another, Alberta is leaving. We have an embarrassing interview with Naheed Nenshit, who, if you don't know, if you're watching from other parts of the country, is running against Danielle Smith in the next provincial election. At least he's in a by-election right now to get what is projected to be an easy seat for him to run against her. We'll keep you guys notified on how that late June by-election unfolds. But you've got people panicking. Nenshi called out Danielle Smith for entertaining a referendum. You've got Laurentian elites like Jean Chrétien coming out of retirement to say dignitaries attending next week's G7 Leaders Summit in Alberta should avoid engaging the crazy from U.S. President Donald Trump. I know it's a terrible Jean Chrétien impression. Maybe I had to make my mouth more crooked. I don't know. He's telling people that don't entertain what Donald Trump's going to say, folks. Don't entertain the crazy coming from Donald Trump. What's really funny is even former prime ministers like Jean Chrétien don't want to acknowledge that the entire country right now is in complete disarray. That you have multiple provinces, not just Alberta, talking about an exit strategy from this corrupt federal government that doesn't want to change its ways. People see the writing on the wall. They see that they're being taxed to death. They can't do this anymore. We covered in our video yesterday how they're bringing out old retirees from the Conservatives even to say, hey, look, we got to negotiate something here or else the cards are stacking against Canada as a country, but there's still time to fix things. I disagree. I think that we're far beyond repair. Now, I don't want to focus on the article here that comes across from Jean Chrétien's statement, because who really cares? But what's important to see is the attacks are now coming to Danielle Smith. So while you have people saying, don't listen to Donald Trump, right before the G7, Danielle Smith is being attacked. Now, I love how accounts like Gil McGowan's here constantly crap all over Danielle, because they don't like that. Again, if you're doing something right, you're winning, because people come out in droves to complain about it. Smith isn't responding on the separatist threat. She's instigating it, it says. Her overheated rhetoric and angry victim narratives have turned her followers against her country. Instead of blaming others for the unity crisis, Smith needs to look in the mirror. I love these articles. I don't know about you guys. They don't trigger me. I get a good kick out of them. This guy claims that his job is to stand up for Alberta workers. Gil McGowan. Danielle Smith has never once instigated any kind of threat of independence. She has said she's leaving it up to a citizen-driven initiative. The government has no part in it. And that's where I always find it funny that these attacks come out, that people say it's all Danielle's fault for lowering the threshold, for allowing people to use their rights to make a decision. Many people who think Danielle Smith isn't working for them, come on. The reason they're scared about this is the article that follows. Again, when you connect the dots, it all starts that up that there's bigger things going on. Danielle has stated that she's got other investors, which I'll cover in another video, lining up for potential pipelines. You've got the NDP and the federal government all saying that investment is down in Alberta because people aren't sure of what's coming ahead. People aren't sure about the uncertainty of Alberta, that if they're going to threaten independence, it is going to drive away investment. In fact, the reason investment is hanging on a thread is because I'm sure of the fact many oil and gas companies, in fact, those who support Alberta independence, who understand the gain that would come from Alberta independence, are waiting to see if a referendum actually goes through. I think it's the latter. I think they're more worried about what happens if the federal government continues its net zero policies, its emission caps, its tanker bans, its C62 or C69, sorry. Danielle's winning. We're winning. In fact, a recent article came out by the Clown Broadcasting Corporation. Poll suggests Alberta's voters' honeymoon with Danielle Smith and UCP endures. There's a reason I want to bring up this article because it leads into why Gil McGowan and others are scared of Danielle Smith and why this basically is saying that the numbers are growing for Alberta independence. It's almost, as long as we stay vigilant, folks, as long as we continue to educate people on the numbers, the benefits, why this should happen, I think we could see a successful referendum vote. It says here, results indicates the Premier's party would cruise to a majority now, winning 61 seats if an election was held today. Why is this important? I'm going to go over some of the notes here and then show you how this plays into Alberta's sovereignty. Danielle Smith approaches the halfway point of her mandate. Over half of Albertans, remember that, over half of Albertans continue to support her United Conservative Party, according to a CBC News poll. It's really quite amazing that 2 years in, she continues to enjoy a honeymoon, said Calgary-based pollster Janet Brown, who's also butthurt and salty. The reason Janet Brown has an issue with this, that she says, well, it's so amazing she has a honeymoon. She's actually listened to her constituents. She's actually standing up for what Albertans require of her. She's doing her job. Survey was conducted of 1,200 Albertans between May 7th and the 21st for CBC News. We haven't seen a honeymoon last this long for a politician since the Ralph Klein days. Those 3 words are key to what we're moving on to. 24 months after UCP Danielle Smith defeated Rachel Notley of the NDP, the polling suggests the Premier continues to hang on to support that propelled her majority in 2023. Now 52% of decided and leaning Alberta voters said they'd cast a ballot for the UCP without even breaking a sweat. The poll suggests that the UCP would cruise to a majority, winning 61 seats, while the NDP could drop from the 38 seats it won in 2023 to 26 seats in the province's legislature. Again, there's a lot of discontent with Naheed Nenshi inside the NDP party. They're saying that the guy doesn't know when to say he's wrong. He won't listen to people. He's always right. Why this benefits Alberta independence? Why I believe that Danielle's recent discussions, again, keep your eyes on the channel for that, where she says she thinks she has other investors. I think it's all tying things together that we could possibly see some kind of arrangement within the United States. Now, am I talking about 51st state? Not necessarily. What I'm talking about is the possibility of Keystone. We're talking about the possibility of more trade, for Donald Trump to consider vaster trade within Alberta while giving the finger to Canada. Take a look at this article. This is where the lefties are losing it. And this is how you know that the numbers are on our side and we're winning. You've got Rick Bell, who is essentially, well, I don't want to comment on Rick Bell. It could be slander. Or Rick Bell, sorry, I got him confused with Don Braid. Rick Bell does pretty good articles. Let's go. The arithmetic rolls out. The devil is in the details. The fine print is where you get the meat and potatoes. The latest Think HQ polling, the question, if a provincial referendum was held tomorrow asking Albertans if they would like to remain in Canada or become an independent country, would you most likely vote? The top number is just the appetizer. Remain, 64%. Leave, 29%. The rest are unsure. The silent majority is what makes this up. And a lot of people are going to say, well, Fringe, it says 64% would remain within Canada. So what are you talking about here? When the question is whether the person would consider supporting Alberta leaving Canada, the number who would consider backing an exit from Confederation goes to 36%. That's the number you could reach if, in the words of Think HQ's Mark Henry, it is a particularly angry at Ottawa day, and there are many on those on the calendar. Just so you know, in a recent nose count in Quebec on sovereignty, that the province, it was a no 59%, yes 32%. Let's dig into the Alberta math, the main course, red meat on the menu. The big number is where UCP voters and NDP voters from the provincial voters sit on Alberta independence. The NDP, 99% want to remain in Canada. But what of Danielle Smith's UCP voters? Remain, 31%. Leave, 58%. 11% are unsure. That's the silent majority we always talk about. So when you look at the other CBC articles saying that if the UCP ran today, they would easily coast to a majority victory. You now have a poll saying that in terms of UCP voters, 58% are ready to leave, with 11% who are maybe looking for some more information. This is why interviews with Alberta Prosperity was so important. This is why I'm going to continue to be the unofficial source for information from Alberta Prosperity. We've got an agreement. They're going to send me information whenever they want talking points, whenever it deems necessary for them to come on the channel to talk about the information being passed around to educate viewers within Alberta, and it's across the country as well, because this is the future of Canada we're talking about. But they're going to educate in terms of the benefits. And maybe this 11% gets bumped up, but anybody saying it's not going to happen, I see it in the comments all the time. People saying it's never going to happen. Alberta's never going to leave. Do you think the Laurentians are really going to let their golden goose walk away? They don't have a choice. All it would take is for a referendum to go through, and even if Ottawa were to say, we're not going to recognize it, well, there's laws. There's legal laws within our Constitution that state it doesn't matter what you say, it is what it is. All it would take is for the United States to recognize Alberta as its own independent nation, and we would have the backing of U.S. military, should Canada want to debate that issue further. Down here it says, think about it. There's a healthy majority of United Conservative Party voters in the last election who would vote for an independent Alberta if they had the chance tomorrow, said pollster Henry. Yes, you should be stunned, he says. Among Conservative voters in Alberta, there is a level of alienation right now that is palpable. Is it shocking? This is Alberta, man, says the pollster. That's a big separatist number for the UCP. A party that is not separatist and is not putting the question of Alberta independence to a vote of Albertans. Smith did really lower the number of Albertans needed to sign a petition to get the vote on independence. The number is 177,000 signatures, and organizers on the independent side say they easily will get that number. We already know that that number is over 250,000. All they need in terms of eligible voters in this province to get a 50+1 vote is just over 1 million voters. This is why they've said at their meetings that all it's going to take is for each individual who has signed their pledge to put their signature out to hold a referendum to convince 2 family members or 2 friends, 2 colleagues that independence is within arm's reach of Alberta and the benefits that it could bring. It's not a very large number we need to get to. Says there's a level of anger within the UCP and it's got to go somewhere, and I think that's why Smith has greased the skids to facilitate a referendum if that's what the people want, says the crunch numbers. Well, the reason she's not greasing it to be slimy or manipulative, Danielle has greased the wheel because she listens to her constituents. She sees the disconnect with her voters. She sees where people are upset with the federal system. Danielle is a smart individual. And you know what? I'll tell you right now, she's got my backing moving forward. She's always had my backing, despite those who wish to turn and say, well, she's terrible, she's this, she's that. I think she's doing a fantastic job. And I've told her in person during our interviews when she's come on this channel that I think she's the greatest premier since Ralph Klein. I just can't put anybody above Ralph at this moment in time. But hey, if Danielle gets independence done, I think that's an easy win. She's telling them you don't need to start a new party to get a referendum on independence. There is expected to be a vote late spring next year, and a lot could happen between now and then. I've spoken to great degree that you have to watch what the federal government continues to do, which will be to ignore Alberta, to not build anything to help us out, to not answer Danielle's demands. You've already got other provinces like screwed up David Eby saying, we're not going to build anything. Quebec saying, we're not going to do nothing. And Mark Carney saying, well, if everybody's not on the same page, my hands are tied. I can't do anything, ladies and gentlemen. What do you think that's going to do for Albertans when 58, or was it 58? I don't want to misquote the number. 58% of UCP voters are ready to leave, with 11% unsure. Again, with another article backing up the statistic that the UCP would easily put Danielle in. It says here, Prime Minister Mark Carney may calm the waters. Doubtful. That's what Smith is hoping. Or Carney could play the same old Ottawa game, and that is not a pretty picture. Again, this plays into the G7. What happens if Donald Trump shows up? And for those who get annoyed with my Trump impression, I apologize in advance. Trump walks in and says, listen, Danielle, I really like what Alberta's doing. I really like what you're bringing to the table. I want pipelines. We want oil to come into America. We want to make America great again. We want to invest in Alberta energy. I said we don't need your oil. We don't need your oil products, but we do. And we're prepared to recognize Alberta as its own independent nation. Should you vote on that? Should your people want to leave? America will open its doors and will welcome you in. Alberta's the greatest, believe me. There's nobody better. There's nobody better than Alberta. Donald Trump is known for dropping those kind of claims, that kind of rhetoric at these particular types of events. We showed on the channel the other day that he has said he's putting out a letter to the countries that are still at war on tariffs to say this is a take it or leave it. Now, while Danielle is out seeking other opportunities that Mark Carney is ignoring, while she's been all over American media talking about the benefits of Alberta energy, Danielle is doing her job as a premier. Do I think that she's sneakily doing things in the background? I know sneakily isn't really a word, but is she being sneaky in the background? Is she doing crazy things to try and, stab Canada in the back? No, she's doing what her people have mandated her for. Get our products to market. The problem is the same thing that Jordan Peterson has always said. It's not a matter of Mark Carney fixing things for Canada at this point. But what can Donald Trump offer Alberta that Canada can't? I'm not talking 51st state. I'm talking an agreement between the United States and an independent Alberta. The benefits that could come from that, people saying you could never afford your health care, your infrastructure, your way of life without the federal government paying for it. Well, I hate to break it to you. Even super lawyer Keith Wilson has stated, we already pay for our health care and we don't get anything back from the federal government. That's a provincial thing. So anybody making these claims at this point are just scared. They're scared of the reality. It says down here, take out a map. Where's the leave vote? In Edmonton, it is to remain 75%, remain at 75%, leave 19% in Edmonton. In Calgary, remain is at 69%, leave 24%. I think throughout the year, that number is going to grow. It says, now let's go outside the big cities. Southern Alberta, remain 50%, leave 42. Northern Alberta, Remain 47%, Leave 45. Central Alberta, Remain 45%, Leave 49%. A Central Alberta riding is where a by-election later this month and the separatist Republicans are in the running. We're going to talk about the separatist Republicans later this week because everyone knows my thoughts about that. Boy, I wish I could spill the beans on that one. But we'll be talking about the Republicans early next week. The pollster says whatever happens June 23rd by-election in Olds Didsbury Three Hills, it is not a predictor of what the future holds for the independents and what it will look like. The by-election will tell us how much or how little support there is for the newly minted Alberta Republicans. Henry says Smith is an astute student of Alberta politics and is well aware discontent and outright anger can lead to the creation of new parties on the conservative side of the fence, splitting the conservative vote. Again, I've discussed that to great length. We'll be talking about it next week. After all, Smith led such a party, the Wild Rose. As for separatist sentiment, a big enough independence number does give Smith leverage with Mark Carney. When Smith was asked this week about whether an Alberta separatism is scaring off investors, the Premier turned her guns on the Liberals in Ottawa. They are the ones who scared off investment. 10 years of the Liberals, the 10 lost years, the lost decade, the Liberal lost decade. And that's the reality, folks. Danielle is dealing with these investors all day, every day. That's her job. She knows the heartbeat of this province. She knows where these investors sit. They stand to gain a fortune if Alberta decides it wants its independence. Why would they halt investment in Alberta if it left the federal government? And emissions caps were suddenly null and void. Production was null and void. Access to tidewaters. People are saying, well, how can you get to tidewaters? There are declarations within the United Nations that state countries are not allowed to obstruct other countries from getting their product to tidewater. It's an act of war. If we even had a deal with the United States, again, Donald comes in. Danielle, we're going to give you access to our ports. Okay, you can ship your oil down to Washington State. Get it out to China. Get it to Japan. South Korea. Your liquid natural gas, it can all go there. We just want a better deal on the product. We'll give you our military. I know, you guys are sick of the Trump. These are all possibilities. Is it going to happen this way? That's not what I'm saying, but they're all possibilities. It says down here at the end of the article, the pollster says even if 3 in 10 Albertas voted to leave in Canada, it would certainly wake up some folks in Ottawa. Quote, I don't think it is something that would be ignored. Well, it's being ignored, and that's the problem. Danielle Smith has shown time and time again that she stands on the sides of her constituents, that she has said, should a citizen-led referendum answer a specific question that does not violate our treaties, that does not violate the laws within Canada, that she would listen to the words of her constituents. She would not turn around and say, well, I'm not going to authenticate those votes. I'm not going to listen to those votes. She has lowered the threshold to make those questions more realistic, because when you listen to your voters, maybe Mark Carney should pipe up and hear this, or any of the federal government for that matter. When you listen to your base, when you listen to your voters, when you listen to those who keep you in your job, sometimes, just sometimes, they're saying something that makes sense, and they'll continue to promote you and keep you in your job for as long as you actually want to remain working for those voters. Let me know what you guys think down below in the comments. Do you think Donald Trump is going to make Danielle an offer she can't refuse? Terrible Marlon Brando. Do you think he's going to come down and say something that's just right out of left field, that's going to spark a lot of controversy? Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. If it's your first time here, I hope this long video has earned your subscription. Make sure as you click that button, you turn on the bell for all notifications so that you never miss a beat. Again, we're going to be talking Alberta Republicans early next week. So join me for that. You don't want to miss it, folks. Make sure to join me live tonight, every Friday night, here on the channel for Friday Night Fringe, our weekly live streaming show where I'm joined by the beautiful Mrs. Fringe as we go back and forth throughout our amazing YouTube community, the best on the platform, discussing everything that happened this week in politics, everything we know that's coming up in the week ahead, as well as your Q&A live, answered within those live streams. I look forward to chatting with you guys each and every week, hearing what you have to say outside of making these videos, but I most importantly look forward to hearing what you have to say tonight at 6 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Central, every Friday night here on the channel. With that said, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you have a great rest of your day. I'll catch you on the next one.